Everybody, this is Cardinal Lines here, bringing you with the brand new video, and today we're going to be talking about Burnish Maidens, or Sentokis, if you rather prefer that name, today in this video. And I actually want to go over the deck list that Simo posted on his channel, where the guy got top 8 in the OCG tournament. And I wanted to make his list, but I also wanted to modernize it and make it a little bit more adhere to the TCG list. And I'm going to go over some of the changes and some of the tech choices that I've included to combat certain decks in the meta. This deck is very, very powerful. It's very, very strong, and it is very interesting. I actually like this deck a lot. I'm not sure if it's Zodiac 2.0, but the way that the OCG has their statistics running, it is pretty close to that at the very least. It's a very strong deck in that nature to even be considered to be compared to Zodiac's, because Zodiac is actually a relatively insane deck to play. So we're just going to go over the list real quick, and I'm going to explain how the deck functions. I'm also going to explain the overall archetype and the goal of the archetype and sort of go over its win conditions as well. So let's just jump right into it. So the first things we got here is 3 Burnish Maiden Ray. This is the only monster in the deck that you kind of want to see in your opening hand. You arguably don't really need to see the other ones, but arguably this card is really, really important because of the fact this card is your main play starter. If you guys don't know what this card is, because we haven't really discussed this on the channel, I'm going to go over the effect real quick. It's a quick effect. You contribute this card, special summon 1 Burnish Maiden from a monster from your extra deck to the extra deck monster zone. If a face-up Burnish Maiden link monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So basically what this card does is, and this is actually kind of an interesting little thing here, is because it's in a lot of ways of like Zodiac, where you can only special summon each of the link monsters once per turn. This card is very similar to like Ratpier, because Ratpier is your play starter. This card is also your play starter in the main deck as well. So some interesting rulings is a very common tech choice against this deck is Winter Cherries, and the way to combat that a little bit, I guess, is to chain this card to the activation of Winter Cherries, and whatever they target with their Winter Cherries, you just go into that monster, so you at least have it still. So it's a way to counter out and play around cherries. It doesn't mitigate the effect of cherries entirely, but it is less effective than just saying losing all your monsters. For example, if your opponent goes into it, like hits your Electrobite or something like that, if you're playing like Pendulum Magicians. So it's a very interesting card. It's a really cool card. Anyway, 3 Ash Blossom. They only play 2 in the OCG, and they play 3 Maxi, so I opted to play 3 of this card instead of 3 Maxi, since we can't play 3 Maxi in the OCG, and I could probably supplement this card for other cards, like maybe 2 more Ghost Ogres, but I don't want to, I really don't want to play more monsters than I had to. This deck is not really focused too much on the monsters, it's focused on the spells and the extra deck cards more importantly. So I wanted to play this card, plus also it's really good with Crystal Needle Fiber. I assume that we're going to be getting that in Flames of Destruction, and if we are, the God save our souls. But anyway, next we have the 1 Ghost Ogre. Alright, you can opt to actually play Emergency Teleport just for cheating this card out. So you can go into Crystal Needle Fiber on turn 1, and it'll be really cool when you do that. I'm not doing that here because I wanted to play a bit more of a focused build on the rest of the brandishing cards. But you definitely certainly can do that. It's very optimal. Emergency teleporting this card out has been optimal in the past, so it's pretty good on that aspect. And 1 Jet Synchron. The reason why you play this card is because I think it's for Crystal Needle Fiber. The first effect of this card, where you add a junk monster, isn't relevant. You can also special summon this card from the graveyard by sending a card, but then it banishes itself when it leaves the field. But that's not terribly relevant. It's not too important. You can make, I think you can make like Chanbara with this card. And Chanbara is pretty good, and we'll explain as to why. I also, side note, I wanted to make this deck as if it was going to be Nationals ready, because I don't think, I honestly don't believe that Summon Source is just going to be National ready by the time we get it. So I decided not to play Summon Sorceress, though if after National, Summon Sorceress is definitely going to be one of the best cards in the game with this card in this deck. So do keep that in mind. Consider the fact that there's an OTK kind of aspect for Summon Sorceress, but we're not playing here, so it's not relevant. So yeah, on to the spells. We play one Jamming Wave. I think Jamming Wave is not very good, but you play it as a 1-up because it is a card that is not terrible. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, target one spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. Then if you have 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, you could destroy one monster on the field. It's non-targeting removal, so there's that. And it's a pseudo MST kind of like effect that you can't chain to, but it is a good. It's decent enough to want to play at least as a 1-of. So 1 Rhoda to search out the Burnish Mechanism, 3 Foolish Burial Goods because this acts as 2 cards sending to the graveyard. You play this card, you activate this card, and you send Metaphys Fusion, which is also in this list, so you can generate more advantage this way. It's really good, it's strong. It's actually a home staple for this deck, I think, more so than most other cards in this deck, so I think it's really good. I play 2 Cardinal Sin. I think this is one of the supplements I'm playing for. I think like Harpy's Feather Duster and another card here. Oh no! This is the OCG has 3 upstarts and you play 3 upstarts in the OCG. But in this case, I think Cardinal Sin is fine. The reason why I say that is because if you're not going to go for a game, or if you can't actually go for a game, Cardinal Sin will just supplement 3 cards in your hand. And at the worst case scenario, if you can't even activate them, they'll act as 2 more cards or 3 more cards that you could put in the graveyard, so that way you can activate your card's effects more often. And the most important card here in this deck, the most important spell card in my opinion, is Burnish Startup Engage. This is actually one of the best cards in the deck, and I'll explain why. If you control no monsters in your main monster zones, you can add one Burnish monster or 1 Burnish card from your deck to your hand, except this card. And if you have 3 or more cards in your graveyard, draw 1 card. It's pretty good because it fits your deck twice. Because if you have the 3 cards in your graveyard, you search the 1 card, then you draw another card. You search first, then you draw 1. I don't like usually doing that, but that's how this card's worded. You have to search, then draw first. You have to search first, then draw. You can't do draw first, then search, because that's not how it works. So it was a really good card because it's just straight up just searches cards and draws 2 cards. So it's really amazing. 1 upstart because I think it's a Cardinal Sin if you don't play upstart these days, because at the worst case scenario you just set this card out if it doesn't work out for you. 1 Metaphys Fusion, 1 Burnish Skill Afterburner. This is I think the exact opposite of Jamming Wave. Which, if you control no monsters, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, destroy it. And if you have 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, you could destroy 1 card or 1 spell and trap card. It's basically the exact same thing as Afterburner, except this one doesn't target spell and traps, and you could spot those instead. Really good disruption if you're playing against the Pendulum matchup, which is very popular in the OCG, and it's currently very popular here in the TCG. So there's always that. 2 Cosmic Cyclone. This guy's also opting to play 2 Twin Twisters, which I am also playing because it discards a card. The reason why I am playing the Cosmic Cyclones is to have a little bit more of a counter towards the Pendulum matchups, as well as I think the Mirror match is really strong, because instead of sending the cards to the graveyard, you just straight up banish them, and then they don't get the additional benefit of having the extra spell card in the grave. So it's always very good. 3 Called by the Grave. This card is very strong in the OCG, and I think it's very strong here. I think it just hasn't caught on with the majority of players here in the TCG. That being said, it's a good card. So basically what this card does is that against the Mirror match, you could target when they activate when they activate Ray, you target the Ray once it hits the graveyard, because I think the attributes a cost. Then you target the Ray, then they can't activate Ray's effect to summon another Burnish Maiden. Additionally, it's really good against hand traps. It's also really good against Trick Stars and stuff that goes to the graveyard more often. I think during the Pendulum matchup, though, you side this card out for something else. But overall, the card is fine. So 2 Twin Twisters, because it puts 2 spells in the graveyard, so that's always pretty good. One Shark Cannon. Shark Cannon is pretty good. It banishes a card. You target a monster in your opponent's graveyard. It's DD Crow, and if you have 3 or more, you could special summon that monster instead. But it can't attack, so it's kind of like a pseudo monster reborn too. So it's always pretty good. 3 Hornet Bit. Hornet Bit is the token generator. This card makes like Link Bow or your other Burnishing Maidens really easy to summon. On top of that, it also gives your generic cards more impact because you could just go into like your generic Link 2s or your Crystal Needle Fiber easier this way. Because all you need to do is just like have Jet Synchron or like Ghost Ogre or Ash Blossoms, just summon those cards and just have this card on the field. It'll be really cool. It's really good. But you have to have 3 monsters in order for it to gain 1500 attack, but that's not relevant. You're using this especially in the token. So it's awesome. This card is awesome. 2 Widow Anchor. I said when I made this card, or when we talked about this archetype, I think a little bit ago, I think I misspoke when I said we didn't talk about Burnish Mechanism. That this is one of the cards that's good. That if this deck is going to get hit, this card is absolutely ban worthy, and I still believe that to this day because it targets an effect monster, and then it has its effects negated, and then during the end phase, I'd take that monster to the end phase. Granted, I don't get the effect on the monster, so maybe it's a little bit more balanced than I thought it was, but it's still a pretty good card because it's like a Feed Exchange effect that doesn't stay on the field, so it's awesome. It's pretty good. And Burnish Mechanism Multi-Roll. I don't think we actually talked about this card, though I could be wrong. Once per turn, you can target 1 other card you control, send it to the graveyard. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards in response, or cards or effects in response to the spell card to your spell card activations this turn. So basically, gives you the option to protect your cards, keeps you going unless you go unabated and unhindered. So yeah, that's pretty good. The next effect is once per turn during the end phase. You can set a Burnish spell with different names from your graveyard to your field, up to the number of Burnish spell cards you activated this turn while this card was face up on the field, but banish them when they leave the field. That part is slightly irrelevant. You usually want to get your quick plays, which are these 3 right here. You really don't want to get Startup Engine because then you'll lose your advantage with Startup Engine. By banishing it, you'd want to have this recur as much as possible differently, but it's really good in this. It's really good for the quick play spells though. The field spell, I'm not a terrible fan. I'm not a really big fan of this field spell. You play it only at 1 of because of the fact of what it does, which it just excavate cards and allows you to send any targeted cards to the graveyard, which is fine. But it doesn't actually do anything for the rest of the deck. It's not broken or anything. So, Infinite Transients. I think we get this in Flood. This card's really, really strong. It's fantastic. It's broken. This card is target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls has its effects negated until the end of the turn. Then, if this card is activated while it was set, negate the activation of other spell trap cards that are in this column. If you control the monster cards, you can activate this card from your hand. It's kind of like the Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched is stupid, and this card is also kind of stupid. So, and 2 Stormstrike because why not? So, on to the extra deck. High speed Rotan Bar. I still think you Rotan Bar despite the fact that you can't OTK your opponent with it. It's fine. It's a decent card. So we're just going to move on from that. TG Wonder Magician is one of the best synchros, level 5 synchros in the game currently. This card activates with synergies as well with Needle Fiber. 1 Borreload, 1 Firewall. You play one or the other. Firewall is the best card here, but Borreload is just fine when you need him in a pinch. It's very easy for you to go into this card. It's with other Link monsters, you just link up, so it's really good. 1 Troymare Unicorn, 1 Phoenix, 1 Heavy Metaphysical Selection Mark. This is for the Winter Cherries targets, because depending on the matchup, I think you side out the like if you're going against Spell Magicians, you side out the Ash Blossoms and then you just split your Winter Cherries in there. So it's pretty good. Crystal Needle Fiber because this card's absolutely insane. 3 Kagiri and 3 Shizuku. obviously you run these cards. One non-water Brandishing Maiden, which interprets that we're going to be getting a more Burnishing Maidens, unless you just can't use this card to summon this card, but you can only summon this card once per turn anyway. So, and one Linkuriboh, because Linkuriboh is pretty good. I pretty much left his extra deck or side deck the same, except I took out, I believe, the Vanity's Emptiness and the Harpy's Feather Duster for the for the 2 Ghost Ogres. Ghost Ogres, and that's wrong, but it is what it is. You might as well play the 2 more just in case if the situation comes up where you need to put 2 more in your deck. So it's always decent. You can set up the Cosmic Cyclones and stuff like that, depending on the matchup too. So if you guys did enjoy, please leave a comment in the comment section below. I'll have the deck list in the description, so please do check that out. This has been Shith and Lance, and I'll be signing out.